Good morning. I now call the meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board meeting to order. We do have a quorum this morning. Mr. Kelly, do we have any introductions this morning?
No, sir.
Public recognition.
Yes, we do. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up. So, as we started looking at the year end and the numbers and the matrix, it came to our attention that we have a couple of staff members who in 2019 achieved what I consider to be a great milestone of 30 years of service to Metro government. And for both of them, most of that service has been with the Air Pollution Control District. And so we thought it was appropriate to recognize those individuals for their community service. And if you would, if I could have Donna Anthony and Regina Freeman come up front. So I think, as far as I know, it's the first that we've done this since I've been here, and I don't know about past history with the district, but again, we thought it was appropriate. And so I will read these. This is a Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District proclamation. Whereas the mission of the Air Pollution Control District is to make our air safe and healthy for breathing and to assist the community in meeting air pollution standards. And whereas that mission relies on the vital work of district employees who ensure that laws and regulations are being enforced, permits are being followed, and air quality is being monitored. And whereas it is important to recognize district employees who reach career milestones for their special contributions toward making this one of the nation's strongest air quality agencies, now therefore we offer this proclamation to honor Regina Freeman and Donna Anthony for 30 years of dedicated service to the people of Louisville. And this is signed by myself as director, and then of course by the chair of the board, Carl Hilton.
More.
That was very good. Congratulations, 30 years. That's a lot of service.
Yes, it is.
That's a lot of service. Thank you. Next, we get the approval of the minutes. The minutes have been distributed prior to this meeting for your review. Are there any corrections, upgrades, or corrections to the submitted minutes from any board member? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. Public comment, Mrs. Hamilton?
I have no request today.
Okay. Unfinished business?
No unfinished business.
New business?
No, sir.
Committee reports? I think we've had those reports, the policy and strategy committee reports at least a couple of months ago.
Right.
Staff reports, Mr. Talley.
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. So first of all, let me wish the board and everyone in attendance happy holidays. I hope everyone has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And as we did the recognitions for folks who have been here for 30 years, we offered that proclamation and plaque, but I also wanted to recognize some other milestones within the agency in terms of their time with the district. So the following APCD employees celebrated 5 years of service with Louisville Metro government: Aaron Bale, Byron Gary, and Brian Paris. The following employees celebrated 10 years of service: Rachel Hamilton and Starlet Raj. In the category of 15 years of service, Matt King. The following APCD employees celebrated 25 years of service with Louisville Metro government: Eva Addison, Brian Fraser, and Mario Wheeler. And so as we recognize those for 30 years, these other recognitions are just as important to the work that we do here at the agency. And so we also wanted to recognize those. And of course, we did 5-year milestones. There are obviously folks that fall in between there at 16 years and 8 years and so forth, but and we just have to name everybody. So.
Well, congratulations to everyone. Very good.
Some additional holiday news, and so pleased to announce that ABCD raised $1,060 for our holiday families this year. That's an increase of $337 over last year's amount raised, and we do this through our chili cook-off, the annual bake sale and auction, and then just straight donations from employees. And so we get names from community services who are located on the second floor, families that are in need. We go out, purchase gifts based on the list that they provide. We had wrapping day, I think it was Monday. And so staff gets in the conference room, we wrap up all the gifts, and we had a room full of gifts, as you can imagine, with $1,000. So just very happy to take part in that. I think we all recognize that many of us in this room are blessed, and there are those in the community that are not so blessed. And so any opportunity we have to make this a better season for those that are not as advantaged as we are is something that we like to do. And so I just wanted to make the board aware of the contributions that staff have made to making someone else's Christmas a little bit brighter this year. HR held a huge Metro Directors HR meeting. So this was out at the zoo, and it was specific for directors to attend along with our HR representatives from each agency. HR has been through a lot of changes recently. They've had a lot of staff changes. They've had a lot of internal reorganization. So it was a good opportunity for them to provide some updates on those changes, provide a leadership report, but they also covered some specific areas talking about the process for disciplining, performance evaluations, OSHA requirements, and benefits. And so huge meeting was an opportunity for directors who quite often don't have a chance to address some of those specific issues, to talk about some of those policy changes and process changes that are taking place at HR. And so while I dreaded going out there, I did attend, and it was a good opportunity to firsthand talk to some of the folks, see some of the new faces, and kind of know who we need to direct specific questions to. But our administrative staff and HR representatives do a good job of keeping us in line, keeping us updated with those processes. But again, they wanted to have the directors out there just to give us an opportunity to ask any questions that we might have. I really want to make sure that I made the board aware of this. APCD had an opportunity to meet with the Louisville leadership team, called the LLT, and so mayor, deputy mayor, and the chiefs of all of the agencies. And this was a request to meet with them that we made. We wanted to make sure and to bring Louisville leadership and that management team up to speed on the ozone work that we're doing, and then more specifically about the multi-pollutant stakeholder process. We did that, but we also wanted to be able to answer any questions and provide our position as regards RFG. As you know, reformulated gas, there's legislation in both the state and the local levels, and so we wanted to make sure that they understood the district's position regarding that issue, and then how that particular issue, which is really just a small piece of our ozone work, how that fits into the overall plan. I think the meeting went very well, and to be quite honest, we had an ask at that meeting. We wanted to make sure that they were on board, one, with the process that we were pursuing to address our non-attainment for the 2015 ozone standard, and that's going through the multi-pollutant shareholder group process. And then we wanted to make sure that they would be on board with whatever we decide we need to do in the implementation of our plan to meet that new standard. So I did not want the agency to get caught in a position, nor did I want leadership to get caught in a position where we were not on the same page, where we gave a different answer to requests that might come from the media or from anyone else. And so it was just a good opportunity for us to do that, and then to enlist their support for our process, and then ultimately with the decisions we made to address the 2015 ozone standard. Again, in the same vein of trying to make sure that key stakeholders in the community are aware of what's going on, we were invited to present, APC was invited to present information about the recent ozone study at a meeting of GLI's Energy and Environment Committee, and this took place last Wednesday. Our communication specialist, Tom Nord, and regulatory coordinator, Byron Gary, attended and gave a brief presentation about the history of ozone in this community, and then also the results of that study. They also answered questions about the ongoing process that's required by our non-attainment designation, and then how members of that particular committee can get involved with the multi-pollutant shareholder group process and to be involved on some of the committees. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But that meeting went very well, and again, it is just about transparency and keeping key stakeholders apprised of what's going on in the community and the position that the district is taking in that regard. Again, just out there in the community, Rachel and I attended Grant Jefferson, who was councilman for the 26th district, this fall community meeting. It was an incredibly well-attended meeting. There were probably 50 to 60 folks there. They had a room full. And for one of the few meetings we go to like that, we were not the star of the show. So Coach and Briggs actually had more folks at their table, and Rachel and I had opportunity just to talk about some of the good things that the district's doing and what's going on in the community. So again, any opportunity we have to do that, we will certainly take advantage of that. This past week, the management team, Rachel, Michelle, and I had the opportunity to attend racial equity training. And this is part of ongoing training that's being implemented by Metro government. And this is really kind of the second phase. The first phase was really more about individual awareness about that issue, and to make sure that we make conscious decisions about how we talk about issues and make sure that we're inclusive in our discussions out in the community. And the second part was to talk about a tool that we will use and we implemented across Metro government to address that issue. And the tool that we're using is one that's considered to be best practices. So Kelly Watson, who is chief of the Office of Equity, has done a lot of research, has gone to a lot of conferences, and they've chosen what they consider to be a national best practice tool to implement racial equity work here in Metro government. The tool outlines a process that enables leadership cross-functional teams, departments, and employees to review policies, initiatives, programs, budget issues, and then any other decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that we clearly understand the impact that those decisions and policies and processes, et cetera, will have on disadvantaged and disproportionately burdened communities, and make sure we view all of those decisions through an equity lens, so it provides us the framework and the tool in order to do that. It is hoped that utilization of this tool will help to mitigate unintended consequences about the decisions that we make. Additionally, our managers and supervisors will attend the same type of training on this particular tool, and then that ultimately will filter down to all the staff members within Metro government. So we are fully supportive of that process. Before this even came out, making sure that we understood and were accounting for it to the best of our ability, racial equity and equity issues across all spectrum was made part of our strategic plan when we submitted that to leadership. And so something that's been on our radar for a long time, something we try to be cognizant of, and this is just another tool that I think will help us do a better job of doing that. As I mentioned last month, the upcoming West Jefferson County Community Task Force Environmental Justice Conference was going to take place, and it did on December the 3rd. It was again titled Climate Change, Environmental Justice, Invest in Our Future. Again, a very well-attended event. There were presentations by Tom Fitzgerald, who is Executive Director of the Kentucky Resource Council and an adjunct professor of energy and environmental law at the University of Louisville. And for those of you who have had the opportunity, he does EJ 101. He does a good job of that, and he really gives a great perspective to the issue of environmental justice in his community. We also had presentations by Sarah Lynn Cunningham. She's a PE and director of the Louisville Climate Action Network, and she had a discussion on the actions of climate change. Asia Barber and Nick Hart presented from Metro Public Health and Wellness and the Center for Health Equity, discussing the disparate health impacts that are caused in our from environmental situations. There was a presentation on communities environment by Kentucky State University, talking about how it impacts things that we don't really think about down to the level of agriculture and how environmental issues are impacting agriculture, how climate warming is addressing that issue. And so if you've ever seen a map where they talk about climate zones across the U.S. and they'll have certain zones mapped out, one of the examples she was pointing out is that from the growth of for the production of apples, that climate change is changing, and pretty soon the zone that I think it was Birmingham, Alabama, in will be the zone that Louisville, Kentucky will be in as climate warming takes effect. So very interesting presentation. Julie Donna, a sustainability specialist with Metro, provided an overview of the current Louisville Climate Action Plan. And then our own Rachel Hamilton, Billy DeWitt, and DJ Fountain provided an updated summary of the district's work with the oft-discussed RARE project, the Regionally Applied Research Effort, and just to bring them up to date on the work that we've been conducting with and the research being done with EPA. All in all, it was actually a very good conference. There was a lot of good information. There was good questions and comments from the participants. And as a side, we also had the opportunity, we had an interactive Tai Chi demonstration take place where we all stood up, did a little bit of Tai Chi, actually got up, stood up, and took part in it. It was actually pretty interesting. And so she always tries to bring something a little different to the conferences, and found this very interesting. The guy who was conducting it is actually a PhD at the University of Louisville, and then he has a Tai Chi Center down on Bardstown Road. Interesting guy in and of himself. We also have performances by the youth activists, the Mighty Shades of Ebony, who do environmentally themed rap performances. And then, very intriguing and very nice, we had a panel discussion that was made up of middle and high school students at the end. And so we asked them questions, they answered questions, they gave us our perspective. But what was clear is that most, if not all of these students have written papers, have done work about climate change, about the environment. And when we asked them questions, they related it back to the work that they had done, to the papers they had written, presentations that they had given. And so it was just very nice to see that our younger generation is being taught and brought to a level of understanding about some very important issues in terms of the environment, in terms of climate change, and that it is in fact very important to them. And so they were able to tie it to their future, to what's going on in their life now. And so it was a very nice end to the conference. We do have one last part, and so we're going to keep this short, the holiday spirit. That's my gift to you guys. So we do have a short presentation, but before we get to that, if we have any questions, I'll take any questions from the board now before we get into that last part.
Well, it's good to hear that the APCD did participate in that environmental justice workshop. That's great.
APCD also sponsored.
Oh, one of those. Okay.
Sponsored.
Sounded like they had a pretty good turnout too.
Yeah, we did. We were at Simmons College, and it really has gotten to the point very, very close to outgrowing the space that they have available. The attendance was really good.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So last part of the director's report, I'm going to give Michelle King just an opportunity, because we always want to make sure, like we're trying to do with everyone else, that you guys are up to speed on the multi-pollutant sheriff sheet. stakeholder process, and so she's going to just give a short presentation and bring you up to speed.
No pressure with me right before the end of the holiday. Telling everybody I'm perfect. No, this is just, we thought we'd take the opportunity as the multi-pollutant stakeholder group work is kind of shifting into a new phase to update the board on where we are and just give you a little bit of a snapshot where we're heading as well. So just as a recap, I know you heard some about this work last month, but we have convened this multi-pollutant stakeholder group, the broad range of community stakeholders, and this is much in keeping with past stakeholder groups that the district has convened, and typically that's been around specific pollutants and the challenges that we're facing, PM, air toxics, ozone. This time, while we're focusing on ozone, because we do have a current non-attainment status, we also wanted to be inclusive of some of those other pollutants that we've been challenged with here in Louisville. And so we want to keep in mind opportunities to reduce both fine particulates as well as air toxics in the work that we're going to hopefully get out of this multi-pollutant stakeholder process. And that work is recommendations both to the district and to some of our peer agencies and some other community partners on both strategies to reduce emissions, but also to recognize health impacts to our community and reduce those health impacts through exposure reductions and through outreach and education. So just again, as a recap, so far we've convened a multi-pollutant stakeholder group 3 times. It's twice in November and once at the beginning of this month. And to date, these meetings have been a lot of information being provided by the district. We wanted to give that stakeholder group kind of a shared foundation of current air quality information, current information about our ozone formation. So the study that was presented at last month's board meeting, there was a much more in-depth and technical presentation of that for the stakeholder group that afternoon. We've also been doing a dive into our emissions inventory. So that is all already taking place. That multi-stakeholder group is being chaired, as you will heard, by 2 of your own colleagues, Mr. Sullivan and Dr. Coburn. And to date, that's really just been us getting everybody together in this room. It's been challenging at times and providing a lot of information. But that next phase that I mentioned earlier is the committee work. And that's where there's a lot more, I think, of the deeper dive into source-specific strategies and source sectors and which are contributing to our non-attainment status and what are some strategies from those sources and source sectors that might be able to help us meet our ozone goals, but also continue to reduce fine particulates and air toxics at the same time. But we also wanted to recognize that a discussion of health and health impacts in our community and what our community's health goals are was an important part of this stakeholder work. So that will also happen in those committee meetings. It will be much more collaborative and working meetings as opposed to just a presentation of information. This is where we're really asking our stakeholders to bring their ideas, their expertise to the table. We also want to convene around outreach and education to our community. And this is actually a new type of committee for our stakeholder work. In the past, that's sort of been just something that we assumed would be woven into the conversation, but I think that we have a lot of really excellent resources around outreach and education, both at APCD, of course, but within our community and around respiratory health. So we wanted to give a concerted place for that discussion to happen. In that first part of the information sharing, we've created the multi-pollutant stakeholder group webpage. I have to thank Tom Nord for being really on top of it. We'll replace his way and get them posted up onto our webpage in no time. So this has been a really dynamic site. This includes all the presentations that we've given to that stakeholder group to date. So I really certainly encourage you all to go check that out. As with all of our presentations, and certainly through the Clearing the Air workshop series that Torrin has coordinated over the past couple of years, we try to make these presentations something that would be useful to somebody viewing them online without the benefit of us being there to present. So they're links throughout anytime you can. We like to hyperlink to additional information or the source of information that's being presented. Also on that web page, we have an emissions inventory dashboard that Byron Gary put together for us. So you can really explore in a very user-friendly way that emissions inventory, those source sectors, and get a better understanding of where the emissions that are impacting our air quality here in Louisville are coming from. And that includes actually emissions inventory for our entire MSA. And of course, we wanted to make sure to point our stakeholders to some of the regular resources that APCD has on. We have a wealth of information, so we point people to those air quality data reports that you all see on a monthly basis. Those are actually also available not only in the board materials on our website, but if you're on the home page, there's a brightly colored array of boxes at the top, and one of them says air quality data. You can click right there and go straight to those air quality reports. You can also get to that emissions inventory dashboard from that as well. And of course, our Louisville Air Watch real-time monitoring data, as well as our engagement programs such as Clearing the Air workshops, which are just really chock full of information, but also previous stakeholder groups. Those final reports from those are all available on our website and are really good, I think, examples of the kind of work that can come out of these groups and the kind of recommendations that can be implemented over the years. So as I said, we're moving into committee work. We have 5 committees at this point, and they're focused around these source sectors, so point sources, area sources, and mobile sources. And those committees we're really expecting to see some emission reduction strategies out of, some feedback on our regulatory work and how we may need to update our regulations to ensure emission reductions, or some voluntary programs out of those different source sectors that can also help us achieve long-term emission reductions. But also the Health Committee and the Outreach and Education Committee, whose work I think is going to be really interesting to see what kind of questions do we need to ask next, what kind of programs should we build upon going forward in order to just raise the level of awareness in our community, which is already, I think, a pretty high level of awareness for a city around air quality. That's something that we hear from our peers when we go to national conferences. Wow, there's a lot going on with air quality in Louisville. I think that that's a real testament to the focus on health in our community. These committees are being coordinated by APCD staff. So the Point Source Committee is being coordinated by Byron Gary, Area Sources by Jamie Chonka, Mobile Sources by Bradley Coombs, Outreach and Education by Torrin Collins, and Byron and Torrin are teaming together to lead that health committee. And of course, all of them, it's a real team effort, are kind of helping each other out throughout these so that we can provide resources to these committees. That is not that these staff are leading the conversation to a predetermined end by any means. We want that conversation to be developed by the committees, but we need to provide the logistics support, provide information resources where they're requested, and just generally help the committee do the work that are laid out in the goals. We've drafted goals for each of these committees, but we are encouraging the committees to take a look at those. Are we missing something? Is there something that they'd like to revamp? We really want these goals to be owned by the committee. So that's the stage that we're at now. And while I think most of, or many of the members of our audience are already involved in this process, I'm encouraging folks to go to the webpage if they'd like to join one of these committees and join in the work. There's a place on there to sign up. And those committees just started meeting this week, so we've had 1 committee meeting so far, so we're not getting in too late by any means. So like I said, the committees are really going to be doing this nitty-gritty detailed work. So here's some of the types of things that we expect them to be discussing and developing recommendations around. And that's the key work product that will come out of these committees. Those recommendations may be very specific strategies. Those recommendations may be, we need to take another look at this topic, or we really need to start gathering data on So, the recommendations may not be an endpoint. They may be the next question that we need to ask. And so we really are trying to keep an open framework for those kinds of recommendations because we think that they'll be useful for us for several years to come. After the committees do their work, then all of that comes back to that larger stakeholder group. And that's really where our chairs are going to do a little bit more of work in those meetings because that will be the committees presenting recommendations and that stakeholder group coming to a consensus around the recommendations and where appropriate, prioritizing them. Some recommendations may have competing resource needs. So some of that prioritization can happen based on the multi-polluting aspect. So we get co-benefits across pollutants from these strategies. And all of that will go into a final report. That final report will be presented to you all here at the board. We'll present that to the mayor's office and as needed to other agencies or groups that might be able to pick up some of those recommendations and carry them forward. So the timetable for how that will happen, we're on a very rapid pace at this point, and that's why we wanted to make sure people understood that these recommendations can be the next question to ask, because we don't have to answer all the questions in this process. Sometimes it's just a recognition that we need to take this next step, and that's an important recommendation that we can then carry forward after the stakeholder group process. So committee meetings, first meeting of all the committees is this week, and then we'll come back after the new year and probably every other week meeting, so another 4 to 5 meetings in January and February. Our goal is to reconvene the stakeholder group in March. We will be flexible with feedback from the committees. So if committees feel like we really need to get one more meeting in to get this ready to take to the stakeholder group, we can work that schedule in. So we'll know more probably in early February as to when that next reconvening will happen of the stakeholder group. That'll take 2 or 3 meetings of stakeholder group to get through that process of hearing recommendations, coming to some consensus. We'll take that information back with the coordinator staff and we'll develop the final report. We'll send that out to the stakeholder group to get their feedback and finalize that report in through the month of May. And our goal is to take that final report and do the presentations here into the mayor's office in June. So it's a pretty fast clip. But we think that folks that have come to the table are really committed to the process. And that just the framework that we've given will allow that conversation to happen in that time frame. So this is our committee schedule for this week. So our coordinators are busy this week. We've already had our first committee meeting on Monday. That was the health committee. A lot of the discussion was around logistics, so that, like I said, when we come back in January, we will really hit the ground running with the substantive content of those conversations. We have an outreach and education committee meeting this afternoon, and then our source sector committees are meeting on Thursday and Friday. So a lot of work getting done here in this building in the week before the holiday. But again, we're really pleased with the participation, the response that we've had from the stakeholders. People are really interested in being a part of this work and having a voice in the recommendations that are going to carry forward. So, are there any questions? That was really fast. I told you, do it fast. Overview. But happy to answer any.
That's a very aggressive schedule you got.
Yes, and we recognize that, and that's why we want to let our stakeholders know that you don't have to answer every question that comes up through this process. Some of that may be the next step in the process. There may be partnerships recommended out of this that carry forward work going beyond this report writing. This is just the first part of our process. We'll take, here at APCD, we'll take recommendations and incorporate them into a longer-term multi-pollutant plan that we'll use over the next several years. So it's very much a beginning of the process and not the end point.
I like the format, the design format you have for each group. That's great.
That's A lot of background with the district's work and some best practices from other groups across the city.
I have a question.
Yes.
On mobile source diesel, what's the group, stakeholder group doing? What's the approach there, or is there anybody that?
That'll be discussed within the mobile source committee. Certainly. We've reviewed, and if you, I've definitely suggest taking a look at the presentations on that multi-pollutant stakeholder group website, so you can take a look at the emissions that we've looked at from the mobile source sector, including from diesel, and strategies around diesel as well as gas powered emissions will be discussed in the mobile source group. I suspect that'll be a big part of the discussion.
Since you asked the question, I'm going to take a shameless plug on behalf here. Please sign up to be on that committee. We'd love to have you.
Well, I see the meeting's tomorrow afternoon.
That's the first meeting, yes. But again,
We'll try.
at the first meeting, if you can make it, would be great, because it's going to help set the schedule for all the rest of the meetings and just the work plan going forward. But if that short timing isn't going to help you, I don't want you to avoid joining the committee because you think, I can't make the very first meeting, but shouldn't come. So we're leaving that sign-up link there through the end of the year. We're encouraging our committee members to send that out to their colleagues and help us grow the number of voices at that table.
Are there any other questions from any board members? Michelle, thank you. That was a very excellent presentation.
Mr. Neal, a couple of additional things I'd like to do before we move on. So in our public recognition, I was remiss in not pointing out to everyone that we have Dr. Robert Powell, past chairman of the APC board, in attendance this morning. So was glad to see him. I had a chance to speak to him this morning as I walked in, but did want to make sure that we recognized his attendance this morning.
He's always welcome.
Always.
Always.
And then I also wanted to point out, and just to make clear in terms of our equity work, that we have two members of our staff who are liaisons with the equity work. They work with Kelly Watson, the chief of equity. They attend monthly meetings of Byron Barber, if you raise your hand. He's been with that process from the very beginning. And then Rachel Smith, who I don't think is in this.
Hold down for us.
Holding down the fort upstairs, is also a member from representing ABCD. And so I just want to be clear, this is not just about what Rachel and Michelle and Matt and Billy and I think. It is also making sure that we roll this down through staff and that we have folks that are intimately involved in this process. And so I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out also. And then lastly, Torrin Collins has been taking part, and she's part of a cohort that's doing environmental equity work. What's the name of that?
Environmental Leadership Program.
And so she's in the midst of that now. We actually met with Kelly yesterday just to bring Kelly up to speed with the work that Torrin's doing to make sure that that can be integrated into the work that Metro is doing. And she's gaining a lot of experience. She's had exposure to a lot of national folks in terms of what is going on across the country. And so we thought that would be a benefit. And so not only what she can bring to ABCD in that effort, because that is environmentally focused, but that work really transcends that, and we wanted to offer that to Metro-wide audience. And so, I just wanted you all to be sure that we do take this very seriously, and we have folks beyond just the management team who are involved in this process.
Thank you. Before we move on to the our quality data report, I missed very important part of our meeting minutes. We did have a public hearing at the last meeting, and I just wanted to make sure all the board members received the public hearing minutes. Are there any corrections, updates to the public meeting minutes? If not, the public meeting minutes are approved. I missed that when I did the regular board meetings. Go to the air quality data. Are there any questions from board members on the submitted air quality data? If you notice, you don't see ozone on there, and it sort of got me so surprised yesterday, and I guess, Bill, you could just
Yes,
explain what happened?
Yes, so we typically remove ozone in the off-season, which is November through February, and ozone this time of year is very low due to the low sun angle and decreased sunlight. So we take that off in the off-season. Our ozone season is from March through October.
So we'll start seeing the deal again in March.
We always see it the month after as we get
April.
the March complete date.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question on that for Billy. I may have missed this on one of the previous reports, but you've probably calculated the design value for ozone 2019 by now.
Yes, preliminarily.
Preliminary.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
And we've not fully quality assured that data,
Yeah.
but we don't have any monitors that exceed the standard of 70 parts per billion, the 8-hour standard. So we're at 68, I believe, for our highest monitor. And that's preliminarily.
Is it your quality assurance or is it EPA?
It's our own process.
It's your own process. Thanks.
Any other questions on that part? Any questions on the enforcement status report? Access mission report, any questions? The complaint investigation status summary? Looks like we have probably completed our agenda. Before I adjourn the meeting, I'd like to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday and look forward to seeing everyone 2020.